was not a sudden death by any stretch of the imagination. This was the onslaught of chronic negative stress induced by deprivation from his human family, by starvation in slow measures, because instead of 120 pounds a day, they gave him 20 pounds every other day to keep him hungry. So he'd go out and look for his own fish, and he'd go frolic with wild whales, but that didn't happen. He exhibited all sorts of behavioral neuroses, aberrant behavior, slamming his head against boats that were in the bay, throwing fits out in the middle of the bay, and sometimes sitting there so calm it didn't create even a ripple of water. I hope this is breaking your heart, because every time I think about it, it breaks my heart.
But time is running out, says Spawn, to make a decision. 28-year-old Corky is nearing the maximum age for killer whales in captivity. Every day the debate continues, he says, is a day lost for Corky and her family.
And what about Keiko, the star of Free Willy? He's an Icelandic killer whale, and the whereabouts of his family are unknown. So unlike the fictional Willy, Keiko cannot be returned to his home waters. Ironically, the orca that helped fuel this debate will live the rest of his life in captivity.
The pilot whale's name is Sully, and his story began in July of 2009 when he stranded on a Curacao beach. But he was incredibly lucky to land there since it's home to the Curacao Sea Aquarium, one of the few places in the entire Caribbean with the facilities and expertise to care for him.
Wow, well, it was a skeleton. I mean, it was as emaciated as a whale or dolphin could possibly be and still be swimming. I mean, skin and bones. He had swam right out of the bay and then could come back in the bay again. So I don't think he was disoriented. I think it was one of those situations where, you know, this animal is physically incapable of keeping himself at the surface. So I think a lot of times these animals will strand because they just don't want to drown.
So they trained him to follow a boat. They started by feeding him fish from the boat inside his pen. Once he was used to following the boat around for food inside the pen, they took him just outside the pen and continued the training. Sully learned very quickly, and within a few days he would follow the boat way offshore at high speed. This daily exercise helped him get his strength back so he could return to the wild.
He can discharge us. He tells us when it's time to go. Now this is the only time we touch him, and that's to rub off all that loose skin.
But nobody ever went in the water with the whale because they didn't want to acclimate him to humans. If he became too friendly towards people, they might never get him to go back to his own kind. He might just start hanging around the beach looking for people to play with. He seemed completely rehabilitated. Sully could keep up with the boat easily. George decided Sully was strong enough to go back to the wild.
So we took him straight out to sea, and you know, we figured, well, once we get out there, we'll just sort of toss a few fish away from the boat and we'll leave him. And we did that. You know, it took us about an hour offshore. We figured we're at least 10 miles out there. Well, okay, it's deep open water. This is their habitat. Hopefully he'll come across some pilot whales and head on back. So we're coming back at full speed, and that boat, I'm estimating you're talking about, you know, 30 miles an hour, so maybe 45 kilometers per hour. We're moving. And so as we're heading back towards the island, a few minutes later, one of the crew on the boat, there's two other trainers with me, Naomi and Junior, and Naomi says, I think I see him back there.
What they discovered is just how fast Sully can swim. Even at full throttle, they couldn't lose him, and he followed the boat all the way back to his pen. Why wouldn't he go back to the wild? Maybe he didn't want to be alone. So George decided the only way they would ever get Sully back to the wild would be to hook him up with a pod of pilot whales. For weeks, every fisherman on the island and even the Coast Guard were keeping an eye out for a pod of pilot whales for Sully. Soon they found a pod. George and the Sea Aquarium staff led Sully out to the pod to make an introduction.
Oh, go, go, go!
He's looking.
Go,
All
man,
right,
go!
Looking at him. Yep, yep, keep
Go,
your fingers
man.
crossed, Dutch. All right, thanks.
Go, buddy, go!
Unfortunately, Sully had no interest. He looked at the pod and swam right back to the boat. Once again, he followed them straight back to his pen. Clearly, Sully had no intention of going back to the wild.